Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to another edition of the Bellringer. For today's session, we are talking about startups and FinTech, what you need to know before you launch. And we are delighted to welcome Kyle Pott, who is Senior Managing Partner, CTO, and CCO of Decise. Prior to co-founding Decise, Kyle served 6 years as the Chief Technical and Security Auditor for State Farm Mutual Insurance Companies, where he was the lead audit liaison to the Federal Reserve. Kyle has extensive experience with audit and federal regulatory compliance programs, and he conducted his first blockchain audit in 2018. Previously, Kyle founded and led an AI-driven compliance and risk assessment SaaS startup where the technology is now used by Decise. So I'd like to welcome you, Kyle, to our Bellringer Volume 22, 422.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Stacey. Actually, my birthday is 11/22, so it's a good one to be on. Awesome.
Excellent, excellent. Well, first off, Kyle, you have launched a startup, you have a new success now, and why don't you tell me a little bit more about your background that caused you to start up this startup?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Yeah, and thanks for having me. So, I came from essentially your traditional corporate background. I'm an engineer by training, software developer. I worked at the same company for 16 years ultimately. And about half of that time was in IT and tech, and then the other half was in audit and compliance. And so I loved the work and I loved everything about the company. But I've always had this itch since I was a kid to start business, to try to win clients, to try to feel like on a daily basis, I could demonstrate my own personal ingenuity. And so I was always like very driven to try to do something that my opportunity in a big organization didn't allow me to do. And so I've always had that kind of itch. And oh gosh, right around about 2020 is when I just started to really think about, what am I really uniquely good at? Is there a chance for me to go out on my own and do something really big and really unique in the market? And so that's where I ultimately met my co-founder, Keela, and we founded Decise.io. And what we do at Decise.io is we're really driven by the idea of making blockchain and cryptocurrency safe for consumers, helping create an ecosystem where people have confidence in crypto as a currency. And so what we do is try to kind of blend these skills I just described, like technology, audit, and compliance, and help other firms that are embracing Web3, blockchain, and future technologies build really scalable and effective compliance programs to ultimately help this economy be safer for both producers and consumers.
Sure. So how did you go about evaluating the market to come up with the Decise product? I mean, basically what I'm saying is, there's so many products out there. What did you do in order to find your niche?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And, we, the first thing that we did was my co-founder and I were working already in management consulting and services industry. And specifically, we had done several engagements that focused on audit and compliance. And so one of the confidence building aspects of assessing the market for Decise ultimately was the fact that we were a player in this space already. And so we had a sense of what the need was, what the job to be done was. But to get more specific for you for a second, if you look at the trends of adoptions of technology for the last 100 years, go back to the radio and the television and the first adoption of internet, and then iPhones and smartphones. And
I bet an iPod. I just found my old iPod.
I don't know what you're going to do with that.
I
was going to say sell it, but I don't know that there's a market there. But one of our it's very motivating for us to look at all of these trends from the past. And then if you look at Web3, blockchain, and crypto, its adoption is faster than any of those other technologies. And so coming from a compliance and a technology background, we know there's going to be really, really big demand in this space in the next 3 to 5 years. We could debate, and I would tell you, Stacey, I think there's already really big demand, but we also saw the job to be done. Compliance is not an easy problem for firms to solve. A lot of firms think first about compliance of what tool am I going to buy? And for Decise.io, we're fundamentally a services and a consulting firm we want to help companies provide sort of the advisory thought leadership to help companies make the right decisions about compliance. And tool selection is typically part of that. But as we're assessing this market, we know that it's complex. We know that there's not easy answers. Most firms want to have confidence that they're doing the right thing for their consumers. And so we saw essentially an inefficiency in the market, a really high growth tech market with an inefficiency that we have decades of experience doing in traditional financial institutions. And so that was like, when you put all that together and you go, I think we can make a difference here. We understand this space, and ultimately we made the leap to go into it.
Which is terrific. And as an entrepreneur myself, I really admire that. What do you feel are the critical must-haves when you're launching a successful startup in the fintech space? And if there's any difference between launching one in fintech or any other space?
I think there's probably a few of these things, and I'll maybe just start with my personal thoughts on it, and then we could talk maybe about the technical things. Like one of the greatest moments for me was when I sat down and told my parents, like, okay, I've stepped away from my career, I founded this company, and we're going for it. Mm-hmm. My dad, like at the dinner table, like toasted me with tears in his eyes. Sorry, it's like, he's like, you've always been an entrepreneur. I've seen this from when you were mowing lawns as a kid. Obviously I did another startup before that was more SaaS and product focused. And it was just this reminder, I think, like the critical must have, I think you've got to have that fire and that courage to step out on your own. And the game changes totally. It's not about I'm competing for a promotion or I'm trying to impress my boss's boss. I'm not trying to be critical. Like companies have their own politics and their own culture, but this is all about I'm betting on myself. I'm going out and I'm going to try to find and solve a market need. And so I think the very first thing is you've got to really think about and do some introspection and go, am I the kind of person that's willing to take that on? And then the second thing I'll say is I met with, as part of co-founding this company, I've tried to meet and talk with and learn from others that did a similar thing 5 years ago, 8 years ago, 12 years ago. I think it's tremendously valuable before you dive into something to like talk to some folks that have been there and see what their experience was. But I was very motivated by one conversation I had with another firm, have to say Craft Compliance. And they told me, when you go out and you go for it, even if your venture fails, what does it really cost you? It's cost you the time of obviously the capital, but it's cost you the time that you put into trying to get this venture off the ground. And if you compare that with what you were doing before, your personal development, the learnings that you're going to get in that period of runway that you have, they're going to be like unmatched from what you would get if you were in like a typical firm. So think of it as I'm investing in myself for this period of time, try to be successful. But at the end of the day, I think sort of it helped me get past any sort of fear of failure. What I'm really doing, I'm giving my time and effort. And so that was maybe the second thing. And then I think sort of like the critical third must have, getting a little more technical here, you've got to be able to sell. And so, like, I know that's a really simple statement, but besides, running your back office and forming your LLC or your Delaware C Corp, like it fundamentally, whether you're building software, you have a hard product, you're drop shipping, you're doing services like we are, to me, it does not matter. At the end of the day, you've got to be able to sit across from somebody, have a compelling value proposition, be able to see the world through their eyes. What job do they need to be done? And why should they take a chance on hiring you or buying your product to solve their need? And that to me, I think just fundamentally comes down to sales. We could say marketing maybe, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter that I come from software engineering, I've got a technical background, like I've got to be able to sit down, understand what the need is, and be able to articulate a compelling value prop at an attractive price point enough to make that potential customer or prospect want to partner with me to solve a problem that they have.
No, that's great. Very good. It's all wonderful. It's all terrific opportunities. What are you finding is your biggest challenge?
That's growth. Okay. I mean, just like for an early startup, we've been at it. This is our third month now. It's all about growth. Right. So
that's such a small amount of time, though. You're saying your third month, so that's really fast.
Well, you know what? When you're living in it though, it doesn't feel that way. Like this is my life. Like this is, dedicating my life to this. So when you stack days, it can feel agonizing when you're in a high growth phase. So you're prospecting for customers, you're trying to grow your network, you're trying to get a partner ecosystem. I think for sure the biggest challenge with any new startup is brand recognition, having a clear value prop, being well positioned, having marketing collateral and a website that helps you sort of wind in your sails to make these customer conversations easier. But I think just at the phase that we're in, it's all about growth, name recognition, and being perceived as a thought leader in the space. And so that's for sure, without a doubt, the biggest challenge right now.
Okay. Now, here's a, down the road kind of thing. Well, also right now, how do you see the market right now? We're going into a very challenging economy. Bells are going off about global recession, et cetera. And, now post startup, what do you need to address?
It's just a fascinating question. So let me rewind to the beginning of the year. I got very serious with my co-founder in conversation about should we go out and do this? And so rewinding 120, 160 days, our conversation was like, man, Keela, this market is frothy. There's so much activity. The economy is killing it. Crypto is growing like crazy. There's more demand for talented advisors and consultants than there ever has been before. If we're going to do this, the economy is ready. And then it's like, okay, so we blinked. We literally blinked. And like 90 days later, crime rate is going up. Stocks are going down. Crypto came down again. And so I think that the learning I think is the economy is never really great forever, and it's never really bad forever. And so a bad market in one sector is a good market in another. And so the economic environment is always changing. I don't mean to be Pollyanna about it. 2008, 2009, I would have not recommended. I would have recommended, like, if you got a job, hold that job. Peak of the pandemic.
And that's when I started this company.
Yeah, that's when you went in. So, and look at you here, whatever, 14 years later, 13 years later. So I think maybe my advice is there's probably never an ideal time to do a startup. And at the same time, like, I don't necessarily think if you look at these external factors, these exogenous factors, like, it's not the economy that's going to make your startup successful. It's ultimately about the people and the product and the need. But I think, like, just maybe use that little case study we talked through. In 160 days, you can go from the frothiest, most active M&A market to, what you said, concerns of a bear market globally. And so maybe the learning might be, like, challenge your core set of assumptions. Understand how your startup fits within the macro economy. We know for Decise, for example, crypto is always really volatile. Crypto is susceptible right now to a significant amount of security incidents and breaches. We know there's a lot of regulator activity and not great clarity about which regulator has jurisdiction based on what statutes. And so for us, even if the broader economy is not going great, we're betting on the Web3 and blockchain trends that we talked about, as well as some of these other set of circumstances that are taking place, whether it's a bull or a bear economy. And so I think know your know your environment and how you're operating it, but document your core set of assumptions. What has to go right for us to be successful, and what can block that? And so for us, I'd like to think we're relatively recession-proof to the extent that if it gets really, really bad, consultants and advisors and service firms are the first ones that get let go before internal staff. So we know we are subject to it, but it changed on a flash for us. And I just think understand the core set of assumptions powering your firm and how dependent you really are on external factors. And it matters case by case. But for us, I think it does matter, but not as much as it might in other industries or other startups.
Well, thank you so much, Kyle. I know that, we could talk on and on and on, but this is a great start. I thank you for your time. I thank you all for listening. We will be addressing this topic in future After the Bell events, which we are now doing in person globally. So I hope
Great to be back.
Yeah, it is great to be back. It really is great to be back. We just had one in Chicago that's where Kyle and I met. We have our next one upcoming in Toronto, and then we'll take a little summer break and then we'll start up again in the fall. So thank you all again. And thank you, Kyle. Have a great summer, everybody. And we will see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Stacey. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.